Alright, welcome to simultaneous equations. Let's do this question together, just one question together. Solve the following simultaneous linear equations using either the method of substitution or elimination. Okay, 2x plus 3y equals 4, 3x plus 4y equals 5. Well, we're going to do both methods. Okay, so let's begin with the method of elimination because it's the easier one. It's the one that I prefer in most situations, although of course sometimes substitution will be easier. Okay, so what are we trying to do with the method of elimination? Well, the first thing that we're trying to do with elimination is to eliminate a variable. Okay, so let's say this time around we're trying to eliminate the x variable. Okay. Now, before we do, we should always start off by giving an index to each of the equations. Okay. So let's call the first equation equation 1 and the second equation equation 2. Okay. Now, the first thing to think is we've got a 2x in equation 1, we've got a 3x in equation 2. So what's the lowest common multiple of 2x and 3x? And that's going to be 6x. Okay. So we're going to change both of these equations into having a 6x there. Alright, so what do we have to do to equation 1 to get... Ooh, let me do that in a different colour. What do we have to do to equation 1 to get 6x there? Well, we have to multiply by 3, don't we? Okay, so what we should do then is we should multiply the whole equation by 3. So in other words, we're going to do equation 1 times by 3. Okay, so 2x times 3 is 6x, 3y times 3 is 9y, and 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, does that make sense? And likewise, what did we have to do to get from 3x to 6x here? Well, we obviously have to times by 2. Okay, so what we're wanting to do to the second equation is we're wanting to multiply it by 2. Okay, so 3x times 2 is 6x, 4y times 2 is 8y, and 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, so now that we've rewritten both of these two equations, so this is still kind of equation 1 just a bit rewritten, and this is still equation 2 just a bit rewritten. Okay, so where do we go from here? Well, what we should do is now we should subtract these two equations from each other. Okay, so we really want to subtract the second equation from the first one. Okay, so 6x minus 6x will give us 0x. 9y minus 8y will give us 1y. And 12 minus 10 will give us 2. In other words, we've got our answer here. Oop, let me do that in a nice purple colour. We've found that y is equal to 2. Okay, so we've been able to eliminate the x term. Have we finished the question? Well, not quite. We've found y, but we still need to find x. And how do we find x? Well, we need to substitute what we've just found, y equals 2, into, now we're allowed to use either of the two equations, the top two equations. So why don't we put it into the first one, just because it's nice and easy. Okay, so what we have is 2x plus 3 times 2 equals 4. Okay. Now, it's just algebra now. 3 times 2 is 6. Subtracting 6 from both sides, we get minus 2. Dividing both sides by 2, we get x equals minus 1. Okay, and there was the second variable that we're looking for. Okay, with every question, you should always write the answer out nice and neatly so the person who's marking your work doesn't have to try and chase it down. Or better than that, just so that you're nice and clear. So what we've found is that x and y is equal to minus 1, comma 2. Okay, so that's how to solve these simultaneous equations using the method of elimination. Alright, now let's try and do this by using the method of substitution. Using the method of substitution. Okay. This method is not as clear, but we'll do it anyway, just because it's good to know both. Alright. Well, the first thing to do is give both of these equations an index, just like in the other one. You know, the index is just a way of talking about it. So the top equation is equation 1, the bottom equation is equation 2. Okay, and now our task, instead of trying to eliminate a variable, what we should do is rewrite one of the equations to make one of the variables the subject. Okay, that might sound complicated, but let's do it. Let's try and rewrite equation 1 to make x the subject. So how do we do that? Well, firstly, let's subtract 3y from both sides of the equation. And then let's divide everything by 2. And a way of writing that is perhaps just a half of minus 3y plus 4. Okay. So what we've done is we've made x the subject of equation 1. Alright. And then the next thing that we need to do is to substitute this, in other words x, into equation 2. Okay? So anywhere in equation 2 that we see x, we should now write a half bracket minus 3y plus 4. Okay, so we're putting this into there. Okay, and this is what we get. We'll have 3 times a half bracket minus 3y plus 4. And all the rest of the terms are still there, plus 4y is equal to 5. Okay. Now what should we do from here? It's quite a messy equation. I suggest the easiest way of doing this without getting it all into fractions, because it's not good to have fractions. Wherever possible, we should try and avoid having fractions. So this half here is going to make it a little bit difficult. So let's multiply both sides of this equation by 2 to get rid of the half. Okay, so if we multiply by 2, then what we're left with is that term without the half. If we multiply 4y by 2, we get 8y. And if we multiply 5 by 2, we get 10. Okay, this looks a little bit more manageable and we can solve it. So let's expand the bracket. So we get minus 9y plus 12 plus 8y is equal to 10. Okay. Minus 9y plus 8y is going to be minus y. If we take the 12 over to the other side of the equation, we get minus 2. And therefore, y is equal to 2. Now, what we should do now is substitute y equals 2 into either the first or second equation. We actually did that in the previous question, so let's just skip a step, and what we get is x equals -1. Okay, it's the same as before. Okay, so there's no need to rewrite something twice. Okay, so therefore our answer to the whole question is x comma y equals -1 comma 2. End of question. So which method is easier, the method of substitution or elimination? They both work, it's just whichever one you find easier is the one that you should do.